Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack the most fascinating insights from the sources you've shared with us. Today, we're diving into something we all do every single day, often without really thinking about it. Communication. It's like this hidden power right there in plain sight.
It really is quite astonishing when you stop and, consider it. Every single word we say, or even the words we choose not to say.
Yeah.
Well, it's a profound act. It can be like a prayer, or maybe a seed, an arrow, or even a ray of light. Language is truly one of humanity's most amazing gifts.
But it's so easily undervalued, right?
Exactly. Just taken for granted.
Absolutely. It's like we've been handed this incredible superpower, and, well, too often we just leave it sitting in the box. So our deep dive today is all about waking us up, waking you up to the invisible power of words. Because let's be honest here, many of us speak without much feeling, we listen without really being present, and maybe we write without pouring our soul into it.
And when that happens?
Well, this magnificent gift, this thing that's meant to connect us, to help us be understood, maybe even loved, it just sort of fades.
It does. And it's not just about, big formal speeches or anything. I remember seeing this ordinary guy in a pretty standard internal company meeting. He wasn't like a professional speaker.
Right.
But when he stood up and he only spoke for maybe a few minutes, the whole room just went silent. You could feel it. Some people actually had tears in their eyes. Others were nodding, like really intensely.
Yeah.
And his impact, it wasn't because he was loud or flashy.
Yeah. What was it then?
It was because every single word he spoke seemed to carry a piece of his soul. You could just feel the authenticity.
Wow. And that impact, it really reveals something important, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It made me realize that mastering words isn't just about, getting information across.
Yeah, it's much deeper.
It's about transmitting emotion. It's about motivating people. And fundamentally, it's about changing reality. I mean, think about it. A single carefully chosen sentence, it can shift the whole vibe in a tense meeting.
Or mend a relationship. A timely, heartfelt apology can do that.
Totally. Or just saying, I believe in you, that can pull someone out of, despair.
But the flip side is just as true, isn't it? The impact can be incredibly destructive too. An unintentionally harsh word can break a heart.
Yeah. Or uncontrolled anger, hurting your own child.
Yeah.
Deep.
Or even losing a massive opportunity just because you couldn't quite find the right words, couldn't articulate your message effectively.
It's this powerful duality. Words used consciously with intention. They're like a magic wand, creating new realities, but used unconsciously without thought.
They become like a knife, cutting off what's most precious. Our sources often use that phrase, a tree needs water to live, a human needs words to blossom. And it's more than just, a nice saying.
It feels true.
Yeah.
A child who hears praise and understanding, they grow differently than one hearing only criticism, right?
Right.
Words literally build the backbone of trust, or they create these silent cracks in self-esteem.
And this goes for our internal dialogue too. How many of us say things to ourselves that wound us deeply? I'm not good enough, or I'll never manage that.
Oh, definitely. We can be our own worst critics.
Exactly. And these aren't just harmless thoughts. They're like these little subconscious curses that embed themselves into our identity. From a word, a belief takes root. From that belief, it starts shaping our reality.
So what does this mean for you listening right now? It means communication isn't just about learning to speak well to, impress people. It starts way earlier, with understanding the sheer power of language itself.
You don't practice just to impress.
No, you practice to enlighten, to heal, and crucially, to connect. The more you grasp this, the more genuinely influential you become. Not through force, but through presence, not by volume, but by emotional depth.
Communication is never really neutral, is it? It either lifts people up or brings them down. It heals or it harms, opens doors or closes them. And it all begins with every single word you choose.
Even a simple phrase like, "you're late." That can carry accusation, or it could carry gratitude, depending entirely on the spirit behind it. Same words, totally different impact.
It's all about the intention, the energy.
You can't control everything, of course, but you can choose how you speak. And sometimes, honestly, that's enough to change a whole day or a whole relationship, maybe even someone's path. If you've ever written a heartfelt card, you know that feeling.
Right. The paper might get thrown away, but the words...
If they carried your heart, someone might remember them forever. But how often do we hold back a thank you or an I'm proud of you? When we do that, we're just letting that gift stay buried, aren't we?
It really is time to reawaken it, to start respecting our words as living energy, to practice speaking truly, honestly, in a way that, genuinely touches people, the world definitely isn't short on noise.
No kidding.
But it is critically short on people who use words to guide others towards, well, towards light.
And people won't always remember every single word you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. And that feeling, it's just with your word choices, you possess this incredible gift called language. The real question is, have you used it to awaken anyone yet?
So if you're thinking, okay, where do I even begin? Start small. It doesn't have to be huge. A sincere compliment, a text message to a parent saying you're thinking of them, a whisper to your child at bedtime.
Or even just making a conscious choice for yourself. Today, I choose to speak positively to myself and others.
Exactly. We don't all need to be brilliant orators. We just need to be genuinely present in every word we speak. When language is alive, it's not just a tool. It becomes this guiding energy, like a map of wisdom, the very breath of the heart.
So if you practice communication like it's an art form,
You'll start to see that every word really does have the power to create deeper change. Let's master that gift. A timely word truly is a ray of light, and sometimes a ray of light can save a life. This deep dive, we hope it will show you how to unlock this power, moving beyond just speaking to becoming a master of communication that actually enlightens, heals, and connects.
all right, let's unpack this journey then into the art of human connection, starting with the very first foundational step, vocabulary, which our sources call beautifully, I think, the eyes of the mind.
Yeah, there's this sort of silent paradox that plays out here. We strive endlessly to understand the world around us, right? But we often neglect to learn the actual language needed to name it properly.
We want to live wisely.
But we refuse to build a vocabulary that acts as that internal light, the light that guides wisdom.
So the idea is, if you can't name something clearly, you can't fully perceive it. Like that quote, you cannot see what you do not know how to name. And this isn't just about physical objects, is it?
Not at all. It applies just as much to emotions, complex thoughts, even leadership. I mean, if you can't articulate a clear vision with precise words, how can you expect anyone to follow you?
That makes sense. Vocabulary isn't just academic then. Our sources link it directly to maturity.
Exactly. They argue you can't truly mature, you can't fully blossom as a person without the ability to express yourself comprehensively. And here's what one source called the most disheartening truth.
Which is?
It's not the person who speaks too little. The real limitation is the person with too much to say, a wealth of ideas, deep feelings, but just not enough words to express it all adequately.
Oh, that paints such a vivid, almost painful picture. Our sources mention that young man, sharp thinking, loads of ideas.
Right, but when he spoke, it was slow, he stammered, always ended with vague phrases like, kind of like.
It was like his thoughts were being, strangled by his vocabulary?
Precisely, and that insight was huge. It revealed that thinking isn't just limited by our circumstances, it's fundamentally limited by our language. You simply cannot think deeply if you lack deep language.
You can't act strategically either, can you? If you don't have nuanced words to differentiate subtle risks or opportunities.
Exactly. And critically, you can't truly understand complex emotions. Real anger versus irritation, or profound disappointment versus just being bummed out, or helplessness versus frustration, if you can only label them with simple, blunt words like annoyed.
And the consequences of that limitation are really profound. Our sources hit this hard. When emotions cannot be expressed, they become violent. That's strong.
It is. When thoughts cannot be expressed, they become vague. And when life cannot be named, it passes like smoke without a trace. It sounds poetic, maybe, but it points to a stark reality.
It's not just poetry. It feels like a description of a life less lived somehow.
I think so, and it reinforces that undeniable fact. Language is the most powerful tool humans ever created. Think about it. Every civilization, every revolution, every love story, every single heartbreak, they all began or ended with words. Without specific words, without nuance, without emotional depth in our language, our inner world just stays this blurry, undifferentiated mess.
So having a limited vocabulary is almost like being nearsighted, but refusing to wear glasses. You see things vaguely, you misunderstand, you react impulsively instead of really comprehending.
And you end up making suboptimal decisions because you couldn't clearly define the problem or the possibilities.
Yeah, I can actually relate to that personally. When I was younger, I could communicate, get my point across. But I felt like I wasn't really touching people. My deeper thoughts felt stuck, like trapped inside my chest, like a bird that couldn't find its way out.
And that's such a common experience. The turning point often comes from a really powerful lesson. I had a teacher who told me once, to think well, learn words, to communicate deeply, practice words, and to lead, master words. Simple, right, but so profound.
Okay, so how do we actually build this vocabulary? Our sources get practical here. For me, back then, it literally became sticky notes everywhere.
I've done that too.
Learning, say, 3 new words a day. Aiming for maybe 21 words a week used actively. And the outcome was incredible. Language started to flow better. My thinking felt sharper. I could finally name my emotions accurately. And conversations just felt genuinely more connected. Because, like the source says, vocabulary is the key that opens the door of understanding.
You know, so many people dismiss this. They say, oh, I'm not a speaker. I don't need a rich vocabulary.
Right, like it's only for writers or professors.
Exactly. But my response is always, are you a human? If you are, you need words. The cost of a poor vocabulary is just immense. You find yourself unable to articulate your needs clearly, or your dreams, or your deepest thoughts. You can't effectively heal loved ones with words or truly inspire your children. You become, in a way, separated from the very life happening inside you. You end up living in this world of unspoken sighs.
One source describes a person lacking language as being in pain, not from injustice, but from the inability to express it.
Yeah.
That's powerful, like the example of the angry man who could only manage to say he felt annoyed.
Right. When what he was actually experiencing was this whole complex wave of psychological emotions, maybe hurt, betrayal, a sense of losing control, feeling misunderstood.
And if annoyed is the only tool in your emotional vocabulary toolbox,
Then you'll likely act out that simple emotion. You'll snap or lash out, closing doors to real connection. And worse, you start to self-identify with that limited state. You think, oh, I'm just like that. I'm just an annoyed person. But no, you're not. You're just lacking the words to name what you're truly experiencing.
it creates this kind of mental fog, doesn't it? I love the metaphor our sources used. Words are like lights in the mind.
Yeah, the more words you have, the more lights you can turn on, and your mind will no longer be a dimly lit room. It becomes a radiant place.
Beautiful. And specific words really can unlock deeper understanding. Learning the word empathy, for instance, helps you see that love isn't just about helping, it's about presence.
Or learning mastery. It's not about suppressing emotions, it's about controlling your reactions to them. And connection, that teaches you to stop trying to force others to be like you and instead start truly listening to them from where they are. Words are like condensed thought. They're maps of our inner world, the very heartbeat of mature wisdom.
Okay, so for you, listening right now, let's get practical. Here are some actionable steps based on our sources. They challenge us to start over like a new student, maybe record new words you encounter, learn 3 actively each day, and crucially, choose maybe 5 each week to actually use in real conversations.
And the purpose here is very important. It's not about showing off how smart you are. It's to live, to connect, to enlighten. When you commit to this, you'll find your conversations start to gain shape, soul, and weight. They won't feel so, loose or shallow anymore.
It really feels transformative. Words are the most powerful weapon of wisdom and also the deepest gift of the heart. I love that. Don't wait until you need to say something important to learn words. Learn them before you need them.
Practice language like a musical instrument. Your life will blossom according to the words you sow. It's a continuous practice, a lifelong journey, really.
That foundation of vocabulary, of being able to see clearly with the mind's eye, it leads us perfectly into step 2 in this art of human connection. Sensitivity, which is about truly listening with the heart.
Yeah, this step really acknowledges that, well, some things in life just aren't understood by logic alone. They can only be grasped, only be felt by the heart. Communication, if it's only linguistic, only about the words themselves, is just superficial.
Right. To really infuse your words with soul, to genuinely touch people deeply, you need this thing called sensitivity.
Exactly. And it's crucial to define this right. Our sources are clear. Sensitivity isn't about being weak or overly emotional.
No, it's more like a subtle perception towards people, isn't it? Discerning those unspoken vibrations, the things people carry around with them but don't actually say out loud.
Precisely. And that's why eloquence and sharp logic, if they're devoid of sensitivity, they're like a sharp tool lacking a soul. Sure, it can persuade, maybe, but it cannot heal. I remember once I was presenting to maybe over 200 people.
Okay.
And I noticed this one young woman right at the back. Her eyes were just downcast the whole time, not really interacting. So I paused. I looked towards her and I gently shifted what I was saying. I said something like, there are times you know what you need to do, but you just lack the energy. And it's not because you're foolish, but maybe because you're carrying a pain that no one has ever asked you about. And I just want to tell you, I see you.
Wow. What was the effect of saying that?
Immediate. The girl just burst into tears right there. And that moment of connection, that touch, it didn't come from logic or a clever argument. It came purely from sensitivity. And what's fascinating truly is that sensitivity isn't some innate gift you're born with.
No.
No, the sources argue it's a skill. It's something you can train primarily by letting go of your ego and truly opening yourself up to the world around you.
That really deepens our understanding of people, doesn't it? It's like remembering that everyone carries a whole hidden story behind the face they show the world.
Exactly. A smiling person isn't automatically happy. A quiet person isn't necessarily cold or aloof. And an angry person isn't just being difficult. They might be hurting deeply and just don't know how else to express it.
The more sensitive you become, the more you start to see the unspoken, and you can then speak directly to what no one else dares to utter. That feels like, well, the sources call it the pinnacle of communication.
I believe it is. Sensitivity in communication is knowing precisely when to speak, and crucially, when to be silent, when to encourage, when to emphasize, when maybe just holding someone's hand is enough, or when simply being present is the most powerful thing you can do.
That's such a crucial distinction. Our sources point out that anyone can listen, technically, but only a sensitive person can hear the part you don't say. And so often people don't actually need advice, do they?
Rarely. More often, they just need someone subtle enough not to make their pain explain itself, just to be held in that space.
Yet, we live in this world that's just overflowing with data, with information, but it feels like it's tragically lacking in genuine feeling. We talk so much, listen so little.
And feeling has almost become this kind of luxury item. Many people learn communication skills hoping to impress others, but the truly influential people, they don't try to impress. They genuinely try to feel others from where they stand.
And here's the kicker, right? To truly feel others, our sources say you have to dare to be vulnerable first.
Absolutely critical. You cannot touch the truth in another person's heart if you yourself are not brave enough to face the truth in your own heart. That means daring to revisit your own past pains sometimes.
Yeah, for me, connecting with that feeling of loneliness I had as a kid, or the ache of an unspoken love, only by touching those places in myself can I truly understand when someone else is going through something similar. It's like it creates this silent bridge between hearts that have walked through dark places.
That's beautifully put. There was this poignant example with a 60-year-old father I spoke with. He hadn't spoken to a son in 3 years. He was insistent he'd done nothing wrong, but his eyes were just filled with this deep sorrow.
So what did you do? Analyze the situation.
No, I didn't analyze or debate. I simply asked him gently, "When was the last time you hugged your son?" There was this long, heavy silence. Then he sighed, and his voice choked up as he said, Probably when he was about 8.
Wow.
And that was it. In that moment, he understood. I understood. Sensitivity once again did what words alone could not. It opened a door.
So sensitivity isn't a weakness at all. It's actually a profound strength. Our sources say sensitive people are not weak, they are brave.
Yes, they dare to be present. They dare to be moved, to be impacted by others, to allow their own hearts to be touched. In communication, that quality is more precious than any eloquence. You can speak with perfect clarity but remain completely distant, but you cannot truly listen, understand, and empathize without creating some kind of transformation, however small. Sensitivity is this remarkable ability to step into someone else's inner world, almost without them needing to explicitly open the door. It's a silence filled with care, an eye that speaks volumes.
And a deep listening that makes the other person feel genuinely seen, not judged, not forced to be strong, just themselves.
Okay, so practically speaking, how do you cultivate the sensitivity? What can people do?
Our sources give us 3 key practices. First, observe with presence. Don't just look with your eyes, look with your entire being, your presence. When someone tells you a story, pay deep attention, not just to the words, but to their tone, their hesitations, their pauses, what's between the lines.
Second,
Ask to understand, not to control. Instead of that accusatory, why did you do that? Try something gentler, like, what did you feel in that moment that made you choose that way? See the difference. One creates defensiveness, the other invites sharing.
and practice empathy, not pity. Really try to put yourself in their shoes, not to pity them, but to see their truth. Don't judge an angry person if you've never experienced daily, grinding, bruised self-esteem. Don't blame a quiet person if maybe they grew up being constantly silenced. You don't have to agree with them, but you need to understand. And to understand, you need to feel. That ties back beautifully to that profound truth our sources emphasize. Sensitivity isn't a weakness of the weak. It's actually an asset of those who've been hurt but refuse to let that pain harden them.
It's the soft heart in a world full of thorns, isn't it? And it's from that soft heart that true touching words are born. Ultimately, remember this. Everyone you meet is fighting a silent battle.
Yeah.
And perhaps just one word you say, one way you listen, will be what keeps them standing for another day. Communication really means being truly present. And sensitivity, it doesn't need to be proven. It only needs to be practiced. People don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to be real. Okay. From the profound depths of sensitivity, we move naturally to the foundational act of truly connecting. Step 3, listening, where, as our sources say, presence creates connection.
It's striking, isn't it? We live in a world that's just overflowing with voices, with noise, yet very few people truly know how to listen. We're taught how to speak, how to persuade, how to present.
Right, all the output skills.
Exactly. But almost no one teaches us the simplest, yet maybe the most crucial thing in communication: how to actually listen with presence.
So what's the real difference? Is it just about being silent while the other person talks?
Not at all. That's a common misconception. True listening isn't just the absence of talking, it's complete presence. It's not listening with the agenda of responding or refuting. It's listening purely to understand.
You mentioned that man in the marital crisis before.
Yes, he insisted. My wife says I never listen, but I always stay silent when she talks. So I asked him, okay, you were silent, but were you truly present? He immediately bowed his head, admitted he'd been scrolling on his phone. He was hearing the sounds, sure, but not feeling the content, physically there, mentally absent.
And that's not listening. Our sources call that absence pretending to be present, and they point out starkly, nothing wounds deeper than someone in pain being listened to only with ears, not with the heart.
Precisely. True listening, real presence, is almost a sacred act. It communicates something powerful to the other person. I acknowledge your existence. I am willing to stop everything else just to understand you. And its healing power is remarkable.
How so?
A person who is listened to is a person who is healed. They don't always need advice or solutions. Often they just need a space where they can be themselves without judgment.
So if you've ever found yourself wondering why you can't seem to connect with someone, even when you feel sincere, maybe the reason is, as our sources suggest, because you speak too soon.
Or speak before truly understanding. Respond before being fully present. Offer advice before hearing the whole story.
Absolutely. The fundamental principle here is that communication doesn't start with the mouth. It starts with listening. And listening is both the first gift and perhaps the deepest gift you can offer anyone. It requires no complex skills.
Just complete presence. I remember asking a friend once, just curious, when was the last time you felt truly listened to, like without any interruption? He paused for a long time, then gave this sad little laugh and said, honestly, I don't remember.
Wow. That's a really stark reflection of our modern world, isn't it? Listening is becoming a luxury. We're just too busy mentally formulating our next response, too eager to jump in and conclude, too excited to state our own thoughts. We completely neglect to hold that crucial space for others to fully express themselves.
And that, tragically, is often why relationships crack, why children grow distant from parents, why colleagues lose trust in each other. The root cause isn't usually a lack of communication. It's communication lacking listening.
There's even research supporting this, right? Our sources mention that people who are allowed to talk about themselves more feel more connected.
Exactly. And when people feel connected, they start to open up. When they open up, that's when you get a chance to genuinely touch their hearts. The powerful takeaway here is crystal clear. If you want to influence, listen. If you want to lead, listen. If you want to heal, listen. Because the greatest power doesn't come from the words you say,
but from the feeling the other person gets when they feel truly listened to.
Right. That feeling of being seen, being valued.
Okay, so how do we get this right? What are the practical guidelines for truly effective listening?
Our sources give us 3 key ways to practice. First, and most fundamentally, listen with presence. That means put down the phone. Don't glance at your watch. Turn your body towards the speaker. Maintain gentle eye contact. Maybe even consciously slow your breathing. Don't rush to speak. Don't rush to correct. Just be present as if for that moment you are completely there just for them. Listen with respect for their emotions. Don't immediately jump in to rationalize everything or minimize what they're feeling. Avoid those dismissive phrases like, oh, what's there to be sad about? Or just get over it.
Yeah, those rarely help.
Instead, try validating phrases like, I understand, or that must not be easy, or simply, thank you for trusting me enough to share this. Remember the key. You don't need to be good, you just need to be sincere.
And the third guideline.
Listen to understand, not just to respond. People don't always need you to have the perfect answer or solution. Often they just need you to be patient enough to walk through the whole story with them, to accompany them in their experience.
You know, there's that specific, really actionable tip I learned from a former teacher, the 3-second rule. After someone finishes speaking, just consciously pause for 3 seconds before you respond. It feels like an eternity in a fast-paced conversation, but it's incredibly powerful, isn't it?
It really is. That brief 3-second silence, it acts as a space for the other person to feel that you are truly reflecting on what they just said. It shows respect. And what often happens in that pause, deeper, truer things will continue to be shared.
Yeah.
Because when people feel genuinely heard,
They feel safe enough to reveal what they hide deepest.
amazing. And this principle of listening, it applies everywhere, doesn't it?
Absolutely. In business, a good salesperson isn't necessarily someone who talks well, but someone who knows how to ask insightful questions and then truly listen to the answers. In the family, a good parent isn't someone who always teaches correctly, but someone who knows how to listen to their child from where that child is.
And in love.
An ideal lover isn't always someone who's brilliant at comforting, but someone who deeply understands that some sorrows only need to be listened to, not fixed.
Listening is the shortest bridge to the heart. That's a great line from the sources. And it's crucial to remember, as you mentioned with vocabulary, that not everyone has enough words to express what they're going through. Right, so you need to learn to listen to what they don't say. Listen to their eyes for hints of hurt. Listen to their sighs for echoes of loneliness. Listen to their pauses for clues about where they might be stuck or struggling.
And when you become present enough to truly feel these unspoken things, you're not just a listener anymore. Our sources say you become a safe haven for a weary soul. It's like every conversation is a small universe. You can choose to enter it as a tourist, just listening superficially to figure out your response.
Or you can enter as a companion, listening deeply, purely to understand. And that choice, the sources argue, determines the quality of every single relationship you have.
So the final powerful advice from our sources on listening.
Don't speak if you haven't listened. Don't respond if you haven't understood. Don't advise if you haven't felt. Listening is hard work, no doubt. It requires you to consciously set aside your ego, your ingrained need to prove yourself right, your impatient rush for solutions.
But the reward.
If you dare to practice this kind of deep listening, people will open up to you. They will trust you. And then when you do speak, your words, however brief, will carry profound weight. Not because you speak particularly well, but because before you spoke, you truly listened.
Okay, we've built a really strong foundation now with vocabulary, sensitivity, and deep listening. Now let's move to the final, truly transformative step in this art of human connection. Step 4, emotion. Infusing genuine soul into your words.
Yeah, this feels like the element that ties it all together, the missing piece sometimes. You can master clarity, you can have sharp, precise words, you can listen deeply, ask brilliant questions, respond appropriately, but without emotion, everything you say, no matter how perfectly crafted it is, risks remaining just empty words.
So how do our sources define emotion in this context?
They describe it as the soul of communication. It's the warmth that turns language into a gift instead of just a test. It's the silent heartbeat that beats within every sentence, making your words not just heard, but truly felt.
That feels like the difference between hearing a technically perfect musical performance and one that actually moves you to tears.
Exactly.
Our sources shared that compelling anecdote about the two speakers at an inspirational leadership conference.
Right. The first speaker was incredibly fluent, logical, presented lots of data, very polished.
And the second?
The second speaker was a bit slower, had less data, but at one point he paused, put a hand over his chest, and simply said with real feeling, "I almost lost my brother in an accident once."
What happened in the room?
The shift was immediate and palpable. The room fell silent. You could literally feel this wave of emotions spreading throughout the space. Why? Because he didn't just speak, he transmitted feeling. And in doing so, he showed everyone where true leadership really begins.
Which is?
Not from skill alone, but from a heart that knows how to love people before trying to control them. And this isn't just for designated leaders. We all need this ability if we want to have real influence in any part of our lives.
Because even though we live in this age obsessed with speed and logic, the truth is, humans, after all, are emotional creatures. Logic alone cannot truly move people deep down. You can persuade with reason, maybe.
But it's often only one sufficiently emotional sentence that actually makes someone want to change.
And we're not talking about being overly dramatic or theatrical here, are we?
No, not at all. It's about real, subtle, profound emotion coming from mature experiences. Think about someone who has genuinely experienced deep loss. When they speak of letting go, there's often a look in their eyes, a quality in their voice that makes you want to hold on tighter to what matters.
Or someone who's been truly forgiven.
They can speak of compassion in a way that just disarms you, someone who has failed and gotten back up. They speak of resilience without needing excessive lament or drama. Emotion, when it has been lived truthfully, always finds a language that transcends all boundaries.
Okay, so if emotion is so critical for connection and influence, why do so many of us seem to hold back? Our sources suggest a core issue here. Many people are afraid of emotions.
Yeah, afraid of seeming weak, maybe afraid of being exploited, or just afraid of being judged as too sensitive.
And what's the consequence of that fear?
We hide it. We hide behind logic, behind avoidance, behind hard, indifferent, cool words. We unconsciously build these strong walls around our souls, which might prevent others from seeing our soft spots, sure, but they also prevent us from truly touching their souls. The key, then, is deceptively simple, but hard to practice.
Which is?
To transmit feeling, you must dare to feel first.
That reminds me of that story about the CEO. Really smart, decisive, but his team felt totally disconnected from him.
Yes, his big turning point came when, in an internal meeting, he finally admitted some of his own fears and weaknesses. He shared how his perceived rigidity often stemmed from his deep fear of failure and being judged by others.
What was the reaction?
For the first time, the source says, the whole room stood up and applauded. Not because the speech itself was particularly brilliant, but because the speaker was finally real. That's the power. When you dare to relive your own pain, even briefly in your communication, you inadvertently give others the courage to face their own pain.
And remember, our sources emphasize, emotion is not something you need to manufacture or create. It is something to be activated. It's always present within you.
If you just dare to slow down, to feel, and to truly touch your own humanity. So when you tell a story, don't just recount the facts to illustrate a point, tell it as if you are reliving that moment. Try to give your words a soul. You don't need long, rambling stories, just enough truth for others to glimpse the real person behind the words.
Emotion, then, it's like a river, isn't it? If you control it too tightly, it gets blocked, stagnant. But if you let it run completely unbridled, it overflows and causes damage.
Exactly. You need to learn to regulate emotion like a conductor leading a symphony, knowing when to bring it forward, when to let it recede.
The power truly lies in the nuance, doesn't it? Sometimes just a silence can be more powerful than 1,000 words. A gentle but genuinely heartfelt sentence can stick with someone forever. A timely pause lets the emotions deepen and resonate, rather than just rushing past them.
A good speaker, a sensitive communicator, knows when to break a sentence just so, allowing the listener's heart a moment to resonate.
Have you ever found yourself getting choked up listening to someone speak, not because they were some skilled orator, but simply because they were speaking directly from their heart? Or maybe you received a really simple message like, "Hey, I'm here if you need me," and found tears welling up.
Yeah, it's not the words themselves, is it? It's the sender's authentic, caring presence coming through. That's the art of saying little but feeling much, being present without imposing.
The world definitely isn't short on words.
No, it's short on words with soul. People don't need us to ramble on. Often they just need that single timely word said to the right person in the right way to make their heart feel just a little bit warmer.
Okay, so how do we practically cultivate this ability to infuse genuine emotion into our communication?
Our sources suggest 3 key steps again. First, listen to yourself. You simply cannot speak touchingly to others if you don't know how to feel yourself. Maybe try writing about your own pains, the things that choked you up, the things you've never dared to tell anyone. They will become a treasure trove of emotions for you to draw upon to truly connect with others.
Second,
Observe others' emotions closely. Emotions are incredibly contagious. Pay attention not just to words, but to their eyes, their breathing, their tone of voice, their pauses. These are often stronger emotional channels than the words themselves. When you connect with these subtle cues, try to respond with that same emotional current without overthinking it. Just match the feeling.
and
Speak with intention. The source uses the term tam, which means something like the deep purpose or heart-mind behind your words. Before you say something important, quickly ask your heart, am I saying this to prove something about myself, or am I saying this to genuinely give something to this person? If your intention is truly to connect, to give, then speak. If it feels like it's coming from a place of boasting or proving, maybe hold back.
because ultimately, emotion is not taught by slides or techniques. It is only conveyed by truth. And you'll know you've succeeded not when people praise your eloquence, but when they remember, maybe years later, how they felt when they were with you.
No one needs you to be perfect. They only need you to be real. And that real, authentic emotion is the only thing powerful enough to penetrate all the barriers of reason and logic we put up. You don't need to speak like a polished professional orator all the time. Sometimes you just need to speak like a human who has stumbled, loved, lost, and somehow risen again. Bring all of that lived experience into your words.
And each sentence will become a key, opening the door to another heart. Okay, we've explored these 4 essential steps now: vocabulary, sensitivity, listening, and emotion. They form a powerful framework. Now, let's shift our focus to an even deeper layer, something that sort of underpins all of this and transcends mere technique: the power of authentic expression.
Right. In this world that's just overflowing with words, constant advice, promises, advertisements, teachings, what truly resonates, what actually sticks with people and gets remembered, it's usually not what's loudest or most frequent. It's what is spoken most authentically.
But let's clarify what that means exactly.
Yeah.
Authenticity isn't just being blunt to the point of hardness, right? Or just blurting out every single thought that pops into your head without any concern for others.
Absolutely not. That's not authenticity. That's often just a lack of awareness or skill. True authenticity, as our sources describe it, is when your words carry your deep presence, when each word feels like a part of your soul that you're putting into it. I once worked with an HR director who spoke very clearly, very correctly, textbook perfect, almost. But people didn't really listen to her, didn't really trust her. My simple question to her was, do you truly live what you're saying? Her words, however correct, lacked that genuine connection to her own heart, her own experience.
And people just pick up on that, don't they? It's like we have this subtle human radar. Our sources say that listeners instinctively sense what is real and what is acted. Only when we manage to shed that outer shell of performance, of trying to prove something, of needing to be perfect, only then can we truly speak words that open hearts.
Indeed. And authentic expression doesn't mean uncontrolled, impulsive speech. Actually, it's the opposite. It demands deep awareness of your own emotions, awareness of the likely impact of your words, and awareness of the listener's deeper, often unspoken needs. Speaking your truth, in this sense, becomes the highest expression of a soul that is no longer running away from itself.
That means you no longer need to speak just to get praise or to show off or to maintain some kind of image.
Exactly. It's simply speaking as someone truly present with what they believe, from their core.
I remember you sharing that anecdote about speaking to those teenagers who had experienced significant family trauma, instead of giving them a logical lecture.
Right. I chose a different path. I simply said something like, look, I don't know exactly what happened to all of you, but I know one thing for sure. The most painful things are often the very hardest things to say out loud. And I want you to know, I'm not here just to listen superficially. I'm here to listen to the things you've maybe never dared to tell anyone before.
And the impact.
A girl started crying almost immediately, not because I was particularly eloquent, but simply because I genuinely wanted to be present with their pain, with their unspoken stories. Authentic words often don't thunder like lightning, but they soak in gently like an early morning rain, silent but deeply awakening.
That's the kind of communication that can actually break through defenses, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you ever had that experience where you say something, maybe something quite simple but deeply true for you, and the person you're talking to just stops arguing? They drop their guard, they go silent for a moment, and then they just nod.
Yes, that exact moment. That moment, our sources say, is when your words have successfully penetrated their outer shell and touched the truest part within them.
And it happens because authentic language doesn't need grandiosity, it needs courage.
Exactly. The courage to admit I don't know when you're genuinely uncertain. The courage to say I'm sorry when you've messed up and mean it. The courage to say I love you when you feel hesitant or vulnerable. Or even the courage to say I need help when you feel weak. These sound simple.
But they're incredibly hard for many of us to do consistently. We live in an age where, sadly, lying sometimes feels easier than speaking the truth. We get skilled at saying what pleases others, what keeps the peace superficially, but we forget how to speak our own truth kindly, constructively. We struggle to express those deep inner feelings when there are no easy, ready-made words.
Which means this requires a conscious journey. A journey of practicing feeling, thinking, and speaking. Not with the goal to persuade, but simply to be present.
It sounds like it's also about leading through vulnerability, even in very professional settings, like that story of the manager who was technically brilliant, but had a really disjointed, unhappy team.
Yes, exactly. I suggested he try sharing some of his deepest fears with them. It was a huge risk for him. But in a team meeting, he admitted that his rigidity, his need for control, often stemmed from his own profound fear of failure and being judged negatively.
What was the team's reaction to that level of honesty?
The whole room was silent, the story goes, and then someone finally said, "Wow, I think we understand you a lot better now." The team dynamics actually started to change after that because the leader learned to speak truthfully from the deepest place within himself. You don't always need eloquent words or beautiful, complex ideas to influence people. Sometimes you just need to be honest about your own experience.
Listeners don't necessarily need a superhuman leader or friend. They often connect more deeply with someone who speaks honestly about the kinds of experiences and struggles they're also facing.
Exactly. When you do that, you become this kind of silent guide for them. So remember, authenticity doesn't make you weak. Quite the opposite. It makes you closer to others. People trust and follow those who feel real, who feel like them, often much more readily than they follow those who just seem right or better all the time.
Okay, so for you listening, here are some actionable steps from our sources to practice cultivating this authenticity in your own communication. First, maybe try writing daily to yourself. Just journal about your feelings, your thoughts, not for anyone else to read, but purely for self-reflection. The more honest you become with yourself, the easier it becomes to be truthful with others.
Second, pause before speaking important words. Just take a beat. Ask your heart that question again. Am I saying this to genuinely connect, or am I saying this to prove something? If the intention feels like connection, then speak. If it feels like pleading, maybe hold back or rephrase.
And third,
Start with small truths. Practice using simple, honest phrases in your daily interactions. Things like, today I feel a bit low on energy, or I'm not entirely sure about this, but I think, or even just a sincere, I'm so grateful for your patience with me on this. These might seem small, but they're the patterns of truly living and present people.
and the final really profound statement from our sources on authenticity. Authentic words don't need applause. They only need one person to be touched, one soul to be seen, one distance to be shortened. And that, they conclude, is when communication truly becomes light.
Beautifully said.
Okay, we've explored these profound concepts, vocabulary, sensitivity, listening, emotion, and wrapped it all in the essential power of authentic expression. Now let's really bring it down to earth and see how these principles play out in our most vital relationships. First up, in the family, where words, as our sources say, are truly seeds sown.
Yeah, the family is such a fascinating and sometimes challenging crucible for language. There's this curious paradox often at play. It's the place where we tend to speak the most but listen the least. It's where we are often most prone to anger but perhaps rarely apologize sincerely. It's a place that should be brimming with love, yet often, sadly, it's where the deepest linguistic wounds begin.
It really is the first soil where language seeds are sown, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's where we learn, or maybe fail to learn, those fundamental relationship building phrases like thank you, I'm sorry, or even just a simple heartfelt I love you.
And the impact of the language used in our childhood home is just profound, shaping us in ways we barely realize. How we speak to our family members, the sources argue, will eventually become how they speak to themselves. Our questions, our responses, even our silences, they become these internal voices that people carry with them, often for their entire lives.
That reminds me of the story you shared earlier about the smart, polite girl whose voice still trembled when she tried to share important thoughts, often adding that little qualifier. I'm not sure if this is reasonable.
Exactly. And when we dug into it, the roots seemed to trace back to her father's dismissive comment years ago, something like, kids know nothing. That casual remark, likely forgotten by him, had created this invisible voice in her head, constantly making her feel like her opinions were inherently worthless.
No one intended to hurt her, of course.
Probably not. But words, even unintentional ones, act as this form of silent psychological coding that quietly shapes a person's identity over time. Think about common examples. A parent who constantly labels a clumsy child, "You're so clumsy," isn't just describing an action, they're effectively labeling a being, defining the child's identity.
Or saying to a spouse in frustration, you're always like that. That attacks their entire person, doesn't it? Not just a specific behavior in that moment.
Precisely. And the real danger is that family members, especially children, often trust these words the most implicitly. They internalize them deeply because they come from people they love, people they believe have their best interests at heart.
But thankfully, there's a flip side to this, isn't there? Words in the family can also be seeds of connection and healing.
Absolutely. Our sources use the beautiful metaphor of words in the family being like seeds sown in an empty garden. They don't necessarily need to be numerous or grand. They just need to be sown at the right time and sown with the heart. A timely word of encouragement can be like a warm blanket on a cold night.
Or encouragement after a failure. That can become an internal voice they carry with them whenever they falter later in life.
Exactly. And a gentle, sincere apology. It can end a seemingly eternal chain of silence and resentment that might have built up over years.
This brings to mind that anecdote about the stern, rather taciturn 60-year-old father whose 24-year-old son felt quite distant from him. The father genuinely believed his son just knew he was proud of him, even though he never said it. But your firm reply was,
No, he doesn't know. That's the core lesson, isn't it? Love, if it's kept only locked away in the heart, sometimes doesn't reach the person who needs to feel it most. Especially within families where we often wrongly assume that love doesn't need to be explicitly spoken, unexpressed love, however well-intentioned, becomes a silent form of disconnection.
And there's often this weird imbalance, isn't there? We might speak 100 kind, patient words to clients or colleagues during the day.
But then come home and offer only curt, impatient phrases to our partners. We might be patient with colleagues making mistakes.
But then lose our patience completely with our own children over small, insignificant things. And the excuse we often use, oh, I'm tired, or, well, they're family, they understand. Our sources really challenge that.
They argue forcefully. Family are not people who deserve less of our best communication. They are the people who need more. More presence, more sincere praise, more kind questions, more genuine thanks. And yes, more timely apologies.
Okay, so how do we actually begin to rebuild or strengthen family communication, especially if patterns have become quite ingrained without it feeling totally awkward or unnatural?
The advice is consistent. Start with the smallest, most authentic things. Don't try to overhaul everything overnight. Maybe just a simple text message. Dad, just thinking of you and miss you. Or a gentle question to your partner. Hey, are you tired? You seem a bit quiet today. Or even just a small handwritten note left on your child's study desk. You can do this. Mom and Dad believe in you. These things don't need to be grand gestures. They just need to be sincere and timely. I love that story about the 8-year-old boy who is often clumsy. Instead of scolding him again after he spilled something, his mother tried a different approach. She said, honey, I know you really tried to be careful today, even though you still forgot this time. I saw you were being more careful than yesterday.
And the effect. The boy's eyes apparently lit up. And from then on, he actually started becoming more careful. The lesson there seems to be that in families, everyone needs to feel seen, not just for their mistakes, but recognized for their silent efforts too.
Absolutely. And here's the perhaps surprising, miraculous part our sources highlight. When you consciously work on changing your communication within your family, it not only helps heal them, but it profoundly heals yourself in the process. Expressing genuine gratitude helps you see and appreciate what you have to cherish. Daring to apologize makes you feel like a true adult taking responsibility. Expressing love openly can unlock emotional areas within yourself that you may have suppressed for years.
So words within the family aren't just formalities, they truly are the seeds of the spirit. If you sow them consistently and genuinely with heart, the whole atmosphere at home will begin to change. The look shared between spouses might soften. The children's trust and openness will likely deepen. You're not just having conversations, you are actively building a home with healing language.
Yes. Maybe just select a few heartfelt sentences and make a conscious effort to speak them regularly. Things like, I'm so grateful for all the quiet things you do for this family that often go unnoticed. Or, I see you growing and learning every single day and I'm just so proud of you. Or even asking, is there anything you really want Mom, Dad to hear, but maybe I haven't asked you about it?
In doing these seemingly small things, you are not just a communicator, you become a sower, a firekeeper, a healer within your own family. And the beautiful thing is, this requires no special degree or training.
Just a warm heart and a kind tongue. It's accessible to all of us.
Okay, from the vital intimacy of the family, let's now turn our attention to the professional realm. Communication in the workplace, focusing specifically on emotional intelligence and its link to influence.
Right. The workplace, when you think about it, is just this constant act of communication. Every meeting you attend, every email you send, every time you even open your laptop and start typing. You are communicating, not just sometimes, but in every single moment. You are showing how you influence the world around you.
And the stakes feel particularly high in the workplace, don't they?
Right.
Words there can either lift spirits and motivate, or they can completely silence an entire team. A timely word of encouragement can boost performance, while an insensitive criticism can stifle valuable talent. Even something as subtle as an unconscious raised eyebrow from a manager during a presentation
Can genuinely make top employees start thinking about leaving. Why? Because workplace communication isn't merely about transmitting information efficiently. It's fundamentally about leading, building a positive culture, and creating genuine influence.
You can have the best strategy in the world, the clearest plans.
But if you don't know how to communicate that strategy with emotional intelligence, our sources warn everything will eventually fall apart amidst unspoken conflicts, hidden hurts, and simmering unresolved misunderstandings. Regardless of your official title manager, team lead, even individual contributor, if you don't know how to listen effectively, respond appropriately, praise sincerely, or give feedback constructively.
You end up leading just by position, by authority, rather than by genuine credibility.
Exactly. And true credibility, lasting credibility, is not born from a title. Credibility is born from how you speak to others, especially when they are at their weakest or most vulnerable.
This really sounds like that striking example from our sources about the CEO. Highly competent, technically brilliant, yes,
Yeah.
but plagued by constant high employee turnover.
Precisely. And when they investigated, the reason wasn't salary or company policies. It turned out that the leader's communication style consistently made people feel worthless.
How specifically?
Well, he would yell when mistakes were made instead of asking what happened or how they could learn from it. He'd send these abrupt, one-line demanding texts instead of having direct conversations. He constantly criticized what wasn't done while completely ignoring the effort people were putting in. My blunt truth to him, based on the feedback, was, you aren't losing employees, you are actively pushing them away with your own communication style. That realization forced him, thankfully, to start relearning how to communicate from the ground up.
So the real deficit in many workplaces isn't a lack of talented people.
No. Often it's a lack of connectors. People who understand those subtle emotional undercurrents in the team. People who know that sometimes a simple word of encouragement can increase performance exponentially, simply because employees are human beings who react emotionally to how they're treated.
It makes sense. Where there is positive emotion, there tends to be high efficiency. Where there is negative emotion, there will sooner or later be a crisis.
So it's worth asking yourself honestly. Am I talking to my colleagues like valued partners or just like numbers on a spreadsheet? When I give feedback on a mistake, am I doing it as a supportive companion or more like a harsh judge? When I send emails, is my underlying intent to genuinely connect or just to command and control? All these small choices reflect your level of emotional intelligence in communication.
Okay, so how do we define emotional intelligence specifically within that workplace communication context?
It's really the ability to first understand your own emotions before you speak. Then it's about learning to recognize others' emotions, often before they even articulate them. And finally, it's about having the skill and sensitivity to choose words that are appropriate to the goal you want to achieve, without hurting or diminishing the recipient's sense of value. Truth, delivered without sensitivity, can feel like a knife. But
With enough emotional intelligence, that same truth can become a helpful mirror. Think about those common communication failures we see at work. Someone repeatedly getting silenced in meetings, a good idea being dismissed dismissively, someone overexpressing frustration and annoying others without anyone giving them constructive feedback. These are all signs of unhealthy communication patterns that prevent even the most visionary organization from truly progressing.
right, the human element gets blocked.
So what are some concrete, actionable steps people can take to communicate more effectively with more emotional intelligence in the workplace?
Our sources provide 3 really powerful and practical steps. First, respond with positive emotion, even when you're giving constructive feedback. Instead of starting with an accusatory, why did you do this? Try framing it differently, like, okay, I think we have an opportunity here to learn something valuable from this outcome. The emotionally intelligent person doesn't always make others feel wrong, even when giving feedback.
Second,
Praise sincerely, specifically, and in a timely manner. Don't wait for the formal annual review. A simple, genuine thank you during a coffee break, a quick appreciative note after a successful meeting, even just a supportive nod when someone finishes presenting these small things are what truly build a positive communication culture over time.
and the third step is crucial when things go wrong.
Yes. When criticizing, criticize the behavior or the work product, never the person. Saying, this particular piece of work is not effective is vastly different from saying, you are incompetent. Saying, for the next project, I expect a different approach is constructive, whereas I just don't trust you to handle this is destructive. When chosen carefully, words can correct mistakes while preserving the listener's self-esteem, and that is what builds true, lasting loyalty.
And the tangible results of adopting this more emotionally intelligent approach can be incredible. There was that success story of a large corporation where mid-level leaders underwent communication training. After just 3 months of consciously changing their habits, praising earlier, listening more deeply, giving more timely and constructive feedback, they saw a remarkable
40% reduction in employee turnover and a 25% increase in overall team efficiency. And the reason wasn't increased salaries or new perks. It was simply because language changed the culture.
Wow, that really underscores the point. Workplace communication isn't just some optional soft skill. It truly is the core of effectiveness and long-term development. Strategy might be built with reason,
But you can only retain people with your heart. And that heart is expressed through the daily words you choose in every meeting, every email, every casual conversation. If you're a leader, aim to communicate like someone sowing trust. If you're an employee, aim to communicate like someone upholding responsibility. If you're trying to influence others, aim to communicate like someone inviting collaboration, not forcing compliance. Ultimately, the person who creates the most value isn't always the one who's best at giving orders, but rather the one who can say things in a way that makes others want to change the most. And achieving that, it requires the right words, yes, but also the right heart and the right timing, a kind of bravery that doesn't come from a degree, but from how you choose to live and work each day with words full of both wisdom and emotion.
Well said. Okay, we've covered a huge amount of ground, from the fundamental building blocks of communication to its critical application in our families and workplaces. Now, let's try to tie it all together by looking at the communicator not just as a speaker, but potentially as a guide, someone who follows a path towards illumination for others.
Right. Because learning about communication at its deepest level isn't just about learning to speak better for your own benefit. It's really about becoming a deeper connector with others. And from that place of deep connection, you naturally start to become a guide in some sense. A truly good speaker, a true guide in this context, isn't someone who uses words primarily to make themselves shine.
No, their focus is outward.
Exactly. They use words to illuminate the path for others. They don't speak just to be heard for their own ego gratification. They speak so that others might see the path that they themselves are perhaps only dimly treading. A person who can do that consistently is more than just a speaker. They become like a living compass for those around them.
That really explains why some people don't need to say very much, but when they do speak, everyone instinctively pays attention, commands respect. It's not just about rhetorical skill, is it?
Not primarily. It's because people intuitively feel that in their words there is real experience, there is depth, there is sincerity, and perhaps most importantly, there is direction.
So the difference between just a technically good speaker and a true guide, it lies in the inner strength behind each sentence.
Yes, and the level of responsibility they take for their words, and ultimately the true purpose behind their speaking. Are they speaking primarily to be heard and admired, or are they speaking so that others might see themselves more clearly? You don't need to be a famous orator standing on a huge stage to embody this. You just need to choose in your daily life to be a person of real influence through every single conversation.
And that influence, as our sources keep emphasizing, starts with consciously choosing to speak with a spirit of service instead of a spirit of proving. It requires checking your own intentions constantly.
Right. Ask yourself before you enter a conversation, or even during it, am I speaking mainly to help the other person shine, or am I speaking mostly to make myself shine? If your genuine intention is to help the other person,
then you won't need to argue just to be right. You won't need to try to win every point. You won't need applause.
because a true guide doesn't walk ahead just to be seen, they walk ahead to open the way for others. I was once deeply moved by an anecdote about a senior leader addressing about 300 employees during a challenging time. I expected him to talk about metrics and strategy.
But he didn't.
No. Instead, he offered this incredibly profound, vulnerable apology. He said something like, I know some of you here have wanted to quit recently. I know there have been times when I was not sensitive enough to what you were going through. And today, I just want to apologize, as your leader, for not always being a good enough companion on this journey.
Wow. What was the reaction in the room to that level of vulnerability from a leader?
The whole room was just silent, the account goes, and then a few people started quietly shedding tears. It was this incredibly powerful illustration that a speaker truly touches others, truly connects, not primarily because they are eloquent, but because they dare to be real, dare to take responsibility, and dare to step into the deep emotional space of others. That is how you connect, and it is from that connection that true leadership flows.
Speaking then becomes almost a moral act, doesn't it? Recognizing that your words can lift someone up or they can bring someone down.
Absolutely. And if you want to connect in that deep guiding way, the advice is always to start by humbling yourself. Try to speak from equal ground, not from some high pedestal looking down. Don't aim to teach others. Aim to share with them. Don't try to threaten others. Try to invite them. Don't try to change others directly. Speak in a way that makes them want to change themselves. This is the essence of leading without commanding.
I remember you mentioning a friend who was struggling to tell his wife how exhausted he felt. When you asked what he usually said, his default was just, stop nagging me.
Right. And my insight to him was simply, Perhaps you haven't actually spoken your truth yet. Perhaps you've only reacted out of frustration. And perhaps what your wife really needs is to see the real vulnerable you underneath that reaction. The true connector, the true guide, is often someone who dares to let others see their imperfections without fearing that it diminishes their value. And paradoxically, that truth, that vulnerability, creates the strongest possible bridge between two people.
Okay, so if someone aspires to inspire and lead through their words in this way, what's the path? How do you become this true communicator and guide?
First, our sources suggest learn to speak your truth without needing praise or validation for it. Learn to listen deeply without feeling compelled to jump in with immediate answers. Learn to simply be present in conversations without feeling the need to play a role or maintain an image. Why?
Because real connection doesn't happen in performance. It happens in sincere, simple, undefended presence.
Exactly. The traits of such a person become clear. A good speaker knows the power of silence. A true connector knows how to ask deep, opening questions. A genuine guide knows when to slow down their own pace to wait for those coming up behind them. You don't need to strive to be the most eloquent person in the room.
Instead, strive to be the most subtle. And that subtlety comes from consistently seeing words not as a weapon to attack or win, but as a torch to illuminate the way for both yourself and others.
How can you discern if you're speaking for others or just for your own ego? Ask yourself this simple question after an important conversation. Did the other person leave this interaction feeling safer, more trusted, more seen, and perhaps more uplifted? If the answer is genuinely yes, then you are likely guiding. If not,
Then maybe you were just speaking alone on your own internal psychological stage. A true guide doesn't use words to build themselves up. They instinctively use words to awaken the inner strength and potential in others.
I truly believe everyone has this zone of light within them, this core of goodness and potential. A sensitive, authentic communicator can learn to touch that zone, helping it to glow more brightly. By choosing consciously to speak with an open heart, with true emotion, and with deep, present listening, you can become that opener of light for others. You don't need to be a famous orator or speak to vast crowds to do this.
You just need to enter every single conversation each day with the simple mindset: I'm here not primarily to shine myself, but to help illuminate something for the other person.
Think about the progression. A speaker without real connection is just an echo, repeating things without impact. A connector without a sense of direction or purpose might offer short-term comfort but little lasting change. But a person who learns how to truly speak, how to genuinely connect, and how to gently lead or guide, that person will be the one who helps others make profound changes in their lives.
That's the integration, isn't it? Communication, connection, and guidance. Not loud, not flowery, just real and present enough. All right, let's bring this incredible journey to a close now. We started this deep dive by highlighting the often overlooked hidden power of something we do every day: communication. We've journeyed together through those essential steps: building a robust vocabulary, seeing with the eyes of your mind; cultivating true sensitivity, creating that bridge from heart to heart; delving into the profound gift of listening, understanding how your presence alone creates deep connection; and finally, exploring how to infuse genuine emotion, the very soul, into your words.
And then we saw how these principles apply in our most crucial relationships, in the family, where our words act as powerful seeds that can either heal or hurt over generations, and in the workplace, where emotional intelligence and communication is absolutely core to retaining valuable people and driving real effectiveness. And underpinning it all, we recognize that authentic expression is the deepest layer, a kind of courage that transforms every single interaction we have.
So now, the ultimate question isn't really how to communicate better in terms of technique. It's shifted, hasn't it? It's become, are you ready, truly ready, to turn your words into light? Because you now understand, perhaps more deeply than before, the immense power you hold in your hands, in your voice, every single day.
A single, correct word spoken at the right moment really can save a lost soul. A timely shared word offered with genuine empathy can lift someone from the depths of despair. A gentle acknowledgement, a simple "I see you," can reignite the fire in someone who is just about to give up. And a phrase as simple as "I believe in you," spoken with conviction, well, that can echo forever in someone's memory, guiding their choices long after you've forgotten saying it.
And why do words have this lasting power?
Because words, if they are sent from the right place, from the heart, they never truly die. They live on in memory, in emotion, in the actions people take, in the choices they make. They really can guide like a light, through dark times. So it becomes crucial to challenge yourself, to consider your underlying intention. What spirit am I living with? What energy am I bringing into every single word I say? Is it a spirit of creation, of building up, or just one of reaction? Is it a spirit of genuine understanding, or just wanting to win the argument? Is it a spirit of service to the other person, or just about asserting my own ego?
Because while technical skill might make someone speak well, maybe even impressively,
Only a person living with the right spirit of communication can truly touch others deeply. Communication, seen this way, isn't just a skill set you acquire. Communication is a way of life. It's a way of being present. It's a way of treating yourself and the world around you. It's not something you just learn intellectually, like preparing for a speech. You have to live communication every single day.
with kindness, with care, with the courage to say the right thing, even when it's difficult, in the right way.
Have you ever wondered why some people only need to say a few very simple sentences and others around them might be moved to tears? It's almost never because they possess some amazing secret technique. It's because they are speaking with their whole heart. Their heart, their being is present in every single word. They don't feel the need to decorate their words with fancy jargon. They don't need to rely on profound quotes from others.
They just need to be real, to live their truth, and to be fully present in the moment of connection.
Exactly. And when you hear someone speak from that place, you don't just listen to their words. You somehow see yourself reflected in their words. And that is the true destination of communication. Not just what you say, but what the other person sees, discovers, or awakens within themselves because of your words.
So what is truly needed to reach that level of impactful communication? A deep vocabulary, yes, that's foundational. Sensitivity, absolutely, to tune into the unspoken. True listening, not just with your ears, but with your heart, your eyes, your patience. Genuine emotion to infuse soul and warmth into your words. Authenticity, the courage to speak from your deepest self.
And maybe, above all else, you need a fundamental love for people, because without that underlying care, that genuine desire for the well-being of others, you'll inevitably end up using words just to manipulate, perhaps to hide your true self, or simply to get what you want. Only with love, with genuine care, can you truly speak to give.
So you now have in your hands every day one of those powerful gifts humanity possesses, language. And with that gift comes a daily choice. Will you use it primarily to react, to defend, to push back? Or will you use it to open, to connect, to understand? Will you use it to protect your ego or to uplift others, to judge or to seek understanding, to win the point or to deepen the connection? That choice, our sources remind us powerfully, creates the quality of your relationships and, perhaps even more profoundly, the quality of your own inner life.
And remember, even if you never consider yourself a great orator or a public speaker, you can still be an incredibly powerful influencer in your own sphere if you simply choose to live authentically and speak consistently from the sincerest place within you. You don't need dazzling rhetorical talent.
You just need enough courage to love and enough presence to listen.
And when you consistently strive to do that day in and day out in small ways and large, you don't just communicate anymore. You begin to heal. You enlighten, you illuminate. You become, often without even realizing it, a silent but persistent guide for those whose lives you touch.
So perhaps a final invitation for you, our listener. I hope that every time you're about to say something significant, maybe just pause for that extra second. Ask yourself silently, is this light? Will these words potentially make the other person feel lighter, stronger, truer to themselves? Is this message worth remembering? Or perhaps is this something that's better kept silent right now? If you start asking yourself questions like that, that whatever you choose to say, you are already living in the true art of communication. No pretense, no tricks needed. Just being a person who knows how to say true things in a way that makes others want to live truer with themselves. That is the speaker, that is the connector, that is the guide, that is the illuminator. And I truly believe you can be that person.